By the time Gideon Rusk came down from the breaks, hunger had stopped being pain. It had become instruction. It told him where to place each boot. It told him not to waste breath. It told him a barn was safer than a begging hand. He had not spoken to a living person in 7 months. He had not washed since the creeks froze. And when the widow found him buried under oat straw with a skinning knife in his fist, he expected the lamp to lift, the shotgun to level, and the whole narrow room of the world to end. Instead, Nora Bell looked at his sunken face and asked, "Can you still swallow?" That question nearly put him on his knees. Gideon had not come down for mercy. Men like him did not trust mercy. He came down because the winter had turned mean even for the high country. The elk had pushed into timber so black and steep a man could die 10 yards from meat and never see it. His snares had hung empty for 12 days. Even the ravens had stopped arguing over his camp, as if they knew there was nothing left to steal. He was 42, though the mountain had folded years into him until he looked older from a distance and more dangerous up close. His beard was iced stiff at the edges. His coat was a patchwork of bear hide, horse hide, and whatever else his needle could bite through. One sleeve had been mended with rawhide. One boot was tied around the ankle with wire. Every part of him smelled like smoke, old blood, cold sweat, and the private rot of a man who had lived too long outside the reach of other people. He saw the homestead late in the afternoon. Not the house at first. The smoke. A narrow blue thread rising against a sky the color of bruised tin. The cabin sat in a poor place, down near a draw where the wind could run at it without slowing. Behind it stood a sagging barn, a split-rail pen, a smokehouse no larger than a coffin, and a woodpile that had shrunk too low for the kind of weather still waiting in the clouds. Gideon watched for a dog. No dog came. He watched for a man. No man appeared. Only a woman crossed once between the cabin and the well, small beneath a gray shawl, a bucket pulling one shoulder lower than the other. A widow, he thought, or soon enough to be one. He did not want her house. Houses made demands. Houses had voices in them. He wanted the barn, a little hay, maybe a handful of oats, maybe an egg if God had gone soft and the hens were stupid. He moved when dusk thickened. The snow held a crust, and each step threatened to snap through. He placed his weight carefully, rolling from heel to outside edge, the way he had learned stalking mule deer across shale. His rifle stayed on his back. His knife stayed loose in its sheath. His eyes did not stop moving. At the barn door, he paused. The latch was a bent strip of iron hooked into a hammered staple. There was fresh grease along the hinge pins, dark in the seam. Someone had cared for that door recently. He should have left it alone. He lifted the latch anyway. The sound tore through the yard. Gideon froze. Every muscle in him went hard. He listened for the slam of a house door, for a cocked hammer, for the ugly bark of a frightened voice. Nothing. Only the wind sliding through the cottonwoods along the creek. He slipped inside and eased the door shut behind him. The barn was warmer than the world. It held the thick smell of oats, manure, damp leather, and tired animals. A single milk cow shifted in her stall. A mule looked over the rail, ears forward, judging him with more sense than most men. Gideon found a corner behind stacked feed sacks and lowered himself into the straw. The moment he stopped moving, the hunger rose up and showed its teeth. His belly cramped, his hands shook, his mouth filled with sour water. He pulled straw over his legs and pressed his back into the wall. He would wait until gray morning. He would take only what he could carry without slowing himself. Then he would climb back into the trees and let the homestead become smoke behind him. The barn door opened before full dark. Lantern light poured across the floor in a trembling yellow fan. Gideon's hand closed around his knife. "I know where you are," a woman said. Her voice did not shake. That bothered him more than if she had screamed. "The mule only pins his ears like that when something ugly walks in," she said. "And that latch has not made a sound since I greased it yesterday." The lantern rose. The light found the feed sacks, the scattered straw, the shape of Gideon's shoulders under the filthy coat. She stood in the doorway with a lantern in one hand and a short-handled coal shovel in the other. Not a gun, not a pitchfork. A coal shovel, held low and steady, as if she already knew exactly where she would put the edge if he came at her. Gideon did not stand. Standing would make him look like what he was. Too big, too wild, too close. "I ain't after trouble," he said. The words came out wrong. They scraped his throat raw, broken from disuse. The woman took one step closer. Her shawl was gray wool, patched at the elbow. Her dress had been black once, before weather and wash water worked it down to a tired brown. Dark hair was pinned hard at the back of her head. Strands had escaped around her temples. Her face was narrow, pale from winter, and so tired it seemed held together by will more than flesh. She looked at the knife. Then she looked at his cheeks. Not the beard, not the coat, not the size of him, the hollows. "Can you still swallow?" she asked. Gideon tried to answer with pride. His stomach answered first. It clenched so violently he bent forward, one arm crossing his middle before he could stop it. The woman's eyes did not soften. That almost made it worse. She lowered the coal shovel. "Come to the house," she said. "You die in my barn, I will have to move you. I have enough chores." Then she turned her back on him. No one had turned their back on Gideon Rusk in years, not unless they were fools. He stared after the lantern moving away through the door. The knife was still in his hand. He looked down as if surprised to find it there, then slid it back into the sheath. His knees cracked when he stood. The mule watched him go. The cabin heat struck him like a slap. Gideon stopped just inside the threshold, enormous and dripping, his boots bleeding snowmelt onto a floor that had been scrubbed white in the grain. The room was small, with a stove, a table, 2 chairs, a washstand, and a bed hidden behind a hanging quilt. Everything had its place. The skillet hooks were ordered by size. The firewood was stacked square. A tin cup sat upside down on a shelf, exactly centered over the peg below it. The woman moved through the room without hurry. "Coat off," she said. Gideon blinked. "You're making a creak on my floor." He fumbled at the thongs. His fingers were stiff from cold and clumsy from weakness. When the coat came loose, the smell underneath it rose into the warm room. He hated her for smelling it. He hated himself more. "Peg by the door," she said, pointing with a spoon. He hung the coat where she told him. "Sit." The chair looked too narrow for him, but he sat, slowly. The old wood complained, but held. She ladled stew into a tin bowl and set it in front of him. Beans, onions, salt pork, and strips of dried venison gone soft in the broth. Beside it, she put a heel of bread dark enough to weigh in the hand. Gideon stared. The steam touched his face. For a moment, he was not a man. He was a mouth, 2 hands, and the ancient terror that the food might disappear before he could get it inside him. "Eat," she said. He tried to go slow. He failed on the second spoonful. The hot salt hit his tongue. Fat slid down his throat. His body took command from him completely. He bent over the bowl and shoveled the food in, barely chewing, barely breathing. One hand braced on the table as if someone might tear the bowl away. When it was gone, he wiped the last smear with the bread and swallowed that too. Then the room returned. The silence, the woman, the shame. She sat in the other chair, repairing a split seam in a man's wool shirt. Her needle moved in and out, in and out. She had not watched him eat, or she had watched and was kind enough to pretend otherwise. "There is water in the blue pitcher," she said. He poured with both hands because one would have betrayed him. "What's your name?" she asked. The question was plain enough. No welcome in it. No fear either. "Gideon Rusk." "Nora Bell." She bit the thread, tied off the seam, and laid the shirt over her knee. There was a wedding band on her hand, loose enough to slip past the knuckle if she let it. Gideon noticed the pale place beneath it where the skin had once been fuller. "You live here alone?" he asked. Her needle stopped. He knew at once he had stepped wrong. Nora looked up. Her eyes were gray, but not soft gray. Flint gray. Creek ice gray. "I live here," she said. "That is enough answer for a stranger at my table." Gideon nodded once. A smarter man would have stayed quiet. He was not always smart when warm. "You should not have let me in." "I know." "Then why?" Nora set the needle into the cloth and folded the shirt. "Because hungry men break things looking for food," she said. "Fed men are slower, and tired men sleep." There was no insult in it, only accounting. That made it harder to bear. "I'll be gone by daylight," Gideon said. "Likely." She stood, took the lantern, and crossed to the quilt curtain. "You can sleep by the stove. Keep your boots on if you must. But if you put a blade through my floor in your sleep, I will be irritated." The lantern went out behind the quilt. Gideon made his bedroll beside the stove. He kept his knife under his hand. He meant to stay awake, but the food was heavy in him, and the heat came deep, and behind the curtain Nora Bell breathed with the slow, controlled rhythm of someone who had trained herself not to sound afraid in the dark. That was the last thing he heard. Morning came with the rasp of a hand grinder. Gideon opened his eyes to gray light and the smell of coffee strong enough to bite. For 3 seconds he did not know where he was. Then he saw the stove, the scrubbed floor, the coat on the peg, Nora at the counter, turning the grinder with one hand while holding a cracked cup in the other. He sat up too fast. His joints answered with hot needles. "Coffee is near done," she said. "I have to go." She did not turn. "Then go." That was all. No plea, no bargain. No question about where a starving man would go, with snow still in the gullies, and no meat in his bag. Gideon rolled his blankets tight. He tied them with 2 jerks, hard enough to bite the rope into the canvas. He shrugged into his coat, picked up his rifle, and opened the door. Cold filled the cabin. Nora kept pouring water into the coffee pot. He stepped outside. The world beyond the cabin felt honest. Cruel, but honest. Trees did not feed a man and pretend the feeding meant nothing. Snow did not ask him what his name was. The high ridges gave no comfort, and Gideon trusted them for it. He walked toward the timberline. 20 steps, 30, 50. Then he stopped. Behind him, the barn latch moved in the wind and gave one small, complaining chirp. Not the full scream from the night before. Just enough. Gideon closed his eyes. He saw Nora's hands, red knuckles, needle scars, the loose ring, the way her shoulder dipped under the water bucket. He swore under his breath, not kindly. Then he turned around. He did not go to the cabin. He went to the barn. In a toolbox under the feed shelf, he found a file, a bent nail punch, and a small crock of axle grease gone hard from cold. He took the latch apart, working the screws free with the tip of his knife. Then he sat on an upturned chopping block and filed the warped edge of the iron strip until the burrs no longer caught. The work steadied him. Metal gave an answer when handled correctly. Wood did too. Hinges, posts, handles, things that were broken in a way a man could see and fix. An hour later, he hung the latch again. The barn door closed with a clean, dull click. No squeal, no complaint. When he turned, Nora was on the porch with a tin cup in her hand. Steam rose from it. She did not smile. She did not say thank you. She held the cup out. Gideon walked close enough to take it, but not close enough to touch her fingers. The coffee was black, bitter, and hot enough to punish his tongue. It tasted better than mercy. "Your wood pile is low," he said, staring into the cup. "Yes. I can swing an axe." "The splitting maul is in the shed," she said. "Head is loose, handle is worse." "I can set it." "Then set it." She went back inside, and just like that, Gideon had not been invited to stay. He had been given work. Work was safer. He fixed the maul with rawhide and a wedge shaved from dry oak. Then he chopped until the yard rang. Swing, split, stack, swing, split, stack. The motion warmed him better than the stove had. It drove the shame out through his shoulders. By noon, sweat had soaked his shirt beneath the coat. By dusk, the pile was twice as high and squared against the cabin wall so the wind would not scatter it. Nora opened the door. "Cow needs water. Trough is froze hard." Use the iron bar." Then she shut the door. Gideon stood there, maul in hand, breath smoking. Something moved in his chest. Not gratitude. Not yet. Use. He had a use. He took the iron bar and went to break the trough. That night, she pointed to a narrow bunk under the back window. "Stove floor drafts," she said. "You can sleep there until you leave." The bunk was too short. His boots hung over the end. The mattress was lumpy with old feathers and stitched twice along the seam. It felt dangerous how soft it was. He lay awake and listened to the cabin settle. The silence was not like the mountain's silence. The mountain's silence was empty. This silence had weight inside it. A shirt left hanging on a peg that belonged to no living man. A second cup kept clean. A bed behind a quilt. A ring that had not been taken off because grief, too, can become a chore a body does by habit. Gideon listened. For the first time in years, he did not want to escape the sound of another person breathing. By the second week, the snow climbed halfway up the window glass. The world outside turned white and closed its fist. Inside, the cabin became a machine built out of need. Nora rose before light. Gideon fed the stove without being asked. She made oats thin enough to pour and coffee thick enough to wake the dead. He carried water. She baked bread. He chopped and stacked. She mended and washed. He broke the ice. She measured flour. He shoveled a trench to the barn shoulder high and kept it open when the wind filled it again. They spoke only when words were useful. Words cost heat. But the room changed around him. He learned which floorboard complained near the stove and stepped over it at night. He learned that Nora turned the coffee pot sideways when the grounds were running low. He learned that she never sat with her back to the door, not even in her own house. She learned things too. She learned Gideon could mend harness better than most men who called themselves teamsters. She learned he sharpened knives with patience, not vanity. She learned he checked the roofline after every hard gust, and that he never took the last piece of bread unless she nodded toward it first. One afternoon, he was repairing a broken rake tooth at the table. The little iron stove was breathing red. The smell of hot metal and damp wool lay thick in the room. Nora was kneading dough. Thump, fold, press. Thump, fold, press. Gideon bent a strip of scrap iron into place and tapped it with the hammer. Nora's hands stopped. The pause was almost nothing, but Gideon heard it. He looked up. Her face had gone still in that hard way people use when their memories strike without warning. He set the hammer down. Too loud? She pushed one heel of her hand into the dough. "My husband used to nail loose boards at night," she said. "Could not sleep if the house had a rattle in it. Tap, 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 until I wanted to throw the hammer in the creek." Gideon waited. "Elias," she said, as if answering the question he had not asked. "His name was Elias." The cabin seemed to shrink around the name. Gideon had seen the grave behind the smokehouse marked with a pine plank blackened by weather. He had not asked. A man who lives by not being asked learns the courtesy of silence. "I can do the hammering outside," he said. "It is winter outside. I have been colder. I did not say you had not." She turned the dough again, but her voice had lost its edge. Just don't make the cabin sound like it is remembering him without permission." Gideon nodded. He lifted the rake tooth, carried it to the door, and finished the repair on the porch in the wind. The cabin had rules. Not all of them were spoken. The worst rule Gideon broke was the one about hiding pain. He had carried the wound down from the mountain. A trap chain had snapped loose while he was pulling a half-frozen coyote from a set. One tooth of the rusted spring had torn through his trouser leg and opened his thigh above the knee. He packed it with spruce gum, wrapped it in a strip cut from his shirt, and kept walking. Cold had made it quiet. The cabin heat woke it. At first it pulsed at night. Then it burned. Then the skin around the bandage swelled tight until every step felt like the flesh was being pulled from the bone. Gideon said nothing. A weak man got left. That was not cruelty. It was weather. On the 5th day of the storm, he was in the shed splitting kindling when the maul missed. Not by much. Enough. The head glanced off the block and buried itself in mud. His bad leg folded under him. He sat hard in the shed doorway, snow blowing across his boots, both hands wrapped around the handle of the maul because it was the only thing keeping him upright. The pain no longer felt like pain. It felt like pressure, like something alive trapped under the skin and trying to dig out. He got to his feet by hatred alone. He made it to the cabin door. The stew smell hit him and rolled his stomach. He stepped inside. Nora turned from the stove. "You are late." Maul slipped. "You are gray." "I am tired." He took one more step. His boot caught the braided rug. The floor came up and struck him. He tried to push himself up. His arms did not work right. Nora's skirt entered his blurred vision. "Move your hand," she said. Gideon had clamped both palms over his thigh. "No." She knelt. "Move it. Leave it." She slapped his hand, hard. The sting shocked him enough that his fingers opened. She pulled the torn cloth aside. The smell came first. Sweet, sour, wrong. Nora did not recoil. Her mouth tightened. The bandage was black at the center and yellow at the edges. The flesh around it had swollen into an angry shine. Red lines climbed toward his hip like thin roots. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she whispered, with more fury than fear, "You mule-headed bastard." Gideon tried to pull his leg away. She caught his ankle and pinned it with both hands. "No. It'll drain. It will kill you." He laughed once, or tried to. Plenty tried. "This will not brag afterward." She stood and went to the stove. Her movements changed. No wasted motion, no panic, no trembling. She took a kettle, shoved it onto the hottest iron, and pulled a bottle of raw corn whiskey from behind the flour sack. She laid out boiled linen, a sewing needle, a razor, lye soap, and a paring knife she sharpened until the sound made Gideon's teeth ache. "Table," she said. "I can sit. You can rot on the floor after I am done. Table now." He dragged himself up, every movement opening a new color of pain. By the time he lay flat on the table, sweat had run into his beard. His hands gripped the edges hard enough to make the wood creak. Nora poured whiskey into a cup and brought it to his mouth. Drink. Don't need courage. It is not for courage. It is so you do not kick me through the wall. He drank. The whiskey burned a clean path through the sickness in his gut, and then became fire. Nora cut his trouser leg open from knee to hip. The air touched the wound. Gideon stopped breathing. She soaked a rag in boiling water, lye, and whiskey. Steam rose around her wrists. Her hands reddened, but she did not flinch. "This is going to hurt," she said. He looked at her. "That a warning?" "That is the polite part." She pressed the rag into the wound. Gideon roared. His body arched off the table. One boot slammed into the chair and sent it skidding. Nora leaned her entire weight across his leg and held him down. "Stay with me," she snapped. "Curse if you have to, but stay still." The heat softened the old gum. When she pulled the rag back, the crust tore open. Dark fluid spilled down his leg and onto the table. Nora poured whiskey into the wound. Gideon's vision went white, then black. Then the cabin returned in pieces. The stove glow, the rafters. Nora's face above his thigh set like a person driving nails into a coffin. She used the paring knife to cut away the dead gray tissue, scrape by scrape. Each touch reached farther into him than pain had a right to go. He bucked once. Nora's voice broke. "Do not make me lose this fight." Gideon opened his eyes. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the wound with hatred. "Elias died from less," she said, fast and low, as if the words were being dragged out of her by force. "A splinter from the barn beam, under the nail." We laughed at it. Then his hand swelled. Then his arm. Then he did not know me. I boiled water until the room sweated, and none of it mattered. Her knife worked. I am not hearing that breathing again. Gideon stopped fighting. That was the gift he had left to give her. Stillness. He forced his hands open. He let his back sink to the boards. He breathed through his nose until the roaring in his skull became something he could survive. Nora cleaned the wound until the bleeding ran red instead of black. She packed it with hot linen and bound it tight, leaving a place for it to drain. When she tied the last strip, her hands shook so badly the knot took 3 tries. Only then did she turn away. At the basin, she scrubbed blood from her fingers with lye until the skin went raw. Gideon lay on the table, spent and shaking. "Thank you," he said. Nora did not look back. "I did not do it for thanks." "No. You are useless, dead." Her voice had gone flat again, but when she lifted the kettle from the stove, Gideon saw her hand still trembling. He closed his eyes. That night, fever took him. For 6 days, the cabin became a place of heat and water and broken dreams. Gideon woke to Nora changing the bandage, woke to broth at his mouth, woke to her voice telling him he was not on the ridge, not in the snow, not alone, and if he tore the wrapping loose again, she would tie his hands to the bunk. He dreamed of the mountain calling through a white storm. He dreamed of a barn latch screaming. He dreamed of Nora's hands holding a rag red with his blood, refusing to let the world take one more body because of a small wound gone bad. When the fever finally broke, it left him hollow. The thaw had begun outside. Gideon woke to water dripping from the roof, one maddening note at a time. The room smelled of damp wool, ashes, and boiled linen. His leg felt thick and wrong, but the hard pressure was gone. Nora was not inside. He sat up. That alone took pride and most of his strength. He stood using the wall. His trousers hung loose at the waist. 6 days had carved him thinner. He made it to the washstand and splashed cold water over his face. The door opened. Nora came in carrying a basket of wet laundry. She stopped and looked at him. "You are up?" "Well, seems so." "The lower wood has to be turned before it mildews. The yard is mud to the porch. The cow kicked loose a plank in the stall." Gideon almost smiled. Almost. No tenderness. No careful little voice for a sick man. No asking what he felt. She handed him the world back, as if she expected him to lift his side of it. For Gideon, that was nearer to kindness than anything soft would have been. "Eat first," she added. "You fall down out there, I will leave you for the pigs until supper." He ate 2 cold biscuits and went to the woodpile. Spring in that country was not green, not at first. It was brown water, gray slush, manure thawing under the snow, and mud deep enough to pull a boot from a careless man's foot. The creek swelled and went loud. The fields showed black patches, then more. The air smelled like wet bark, old leaves, and things uncovered too soon. Gideon moved slowly for the first week. He hated it. The wound pulled tight when he stepped. His strength came back in mean little portions. He turned the wood, then sat, dug a drainage ditch, then leaned on the spade until the shaking passed, mended the stall plank, then stood outside the barn breathing through his teeth until the pain dulled. Nora saw all of it. She said nothing. That was her mercy. The cabin changed with the thaw. The silence between them lost its teeth. It became something they could set tools inside. At breakfast, she slid the coffee toward him without looking. He left the last biscuit, unless she cut it in half. When she reached for the flour tin, he leaned back before her sleeve touched his shoulder. When he sharpened the kitchen knife, she moved the lamp closer without a word. One evening, rain worked softly at the roof. Nora sat at the table sorting seed beans from a jar. Gideon rubbed tallow into the cracked seams of his boots. "The creek will eat the south fence if it rises again," she said. He kept rubbing. "How many posts?" "4 gone, maybe 5. "What kind of ground?" "Clay over stone." "Lodgepole will hold if I set them deep." "Lodgepole will do." That was how she asked. Never directly. A problem placed on the table. Room left beside it. Gideon stepping into the space because it had shaped itself like his name. He looked at her across the lantern light. Her hair had come loose from its knot. There was a streak of flour along one cheek. She looked older than she had the first night, and less breakable, which made no sense until he understood that breakable things sometimes stay broken, but hard things can bend and still cut. Her hand lifted to push the hair from her face. For half a second it trembled. Not from cold, not from work. From loneliness, maybe. From memory. from the awful effort of staying alive with no witness but God and livestock. Gideon looked down at his boots. He gave her the privacy of not being seen. The next morning, he cut the posts. The mud brought men down from the road. It happened 3 weeks after the worst snow vanished from the north slope. The day had turned close and wet, heavy with the promise of a storm. Gideon was beyond the barn with a post driver, setting lodgepole into the south fence. He had stripped to his shirt. Mud flecked his arms. His bad leg ached, but the work was good, clean punishment. Thud, lift, thud, lift. Then he heard laughter from the yard. Not neighbor laughter, not the full-bellied sound of men passing time. This was thin laughter, testing laughter, the kind that waits to see whether fear will answer. Gideon lowered the driver. He moved along the barn wall, slow enough that the mud did not suck loud at his boots. 3 riders sat in front of the cabin. Their horses were poor, ribs showing through spring coats. The men wore dusters shiny with old rain and grease. One had a red scarf at his throat. One carried a pistol too clean for the rest of him. The third kept looking toward the barn, which told Gideon he was the only one with sense. Nora stood on the porch with a shotgun broken open across one arm. Unloaded. The shells lay on the table just inside the open door, visible from where Gideon stood. His stomach tightened. The man with the red scarf leaned over his saddle horn and smiled. "Now, Mrs. Bell, that is a cold way to greet company." "This is not company." "We heard you had oats." "You heard wrong." "We heard you had a mule, too." "The mule kicks strangers." The rider's smile widened. "Most things can be gentled." Nora's hand moved to the shotgun shells. The man with the clean pistol laughed. "You load that before I cross the porch, maybe. But your hands are shaking some." They were. Only little. Enough. Gideon felt something old and ugly lift its head inside him. He stepped from the barn shadow. The horses saw him first. The one on the left jerked its head up and sidestepped. The rider twisted in the saddle, and all the color drained from his face. Gideon did not run. He walked, mud on his boots. Blood scabbed across one knuckle from the fence work. Beard wild. Eyes empty of every social promise men rely on to keep from being torn apart. The rider with the pistol reached for his gun. Gideon closed the distance in 3 strides. He grabbed the man's coat front and hauled him clean off the horse. The man hit the ground hard enough to empty his lungs. The yard broke open. The red scarf rider cursed and clawed at his reins. The third horse reared. Nora snapped a shell into the shotgun and brought it up, but Gideon was already moving. The pistol man rolled, sucking air, his hand still fighting toward the holster. Gideon brought one boot down on the gun hand. The scream cut the yard in half. The red scarf man fired from the saddle. The shot tore through the porch rail inches from Nora's hip. Gideon turned, not fast like a young man, fast like a falling tree. He caught the bridle, yanked the horse's head down, and drove his shoulder into the rider's leg. Horse and man lurched sideways. The man fell, one spur catching in the stirrup, and Gideon dragged him the rest of the way into the mud. There was no clean fight after that. Only weight, mud, fists, a knee in Gideon's ribs, a mouthful of dirt, a hand closing round his throat and failing to find enough of it. Gideon struck once. The man's nose broke flat. He struck again. Teeth flashed into the mud. Then Gideon had both hands around the man's neck. The world narrowed. The man's pulse beat under Gideon's thumbs. A small, panicked thing. Gideon could end it. Part of him had already decided to. "Gideon!" Nora's voice, not screaming, commanding. He did not let go. "Gideon," she said again. "That is enough." The words reached him slowly, like sound traveling through deep water. He looked up. The third rider sat frozen on his horse, staring. Nora had the shotgun leveled at his chest now, both hands steady. "Ride," she told him. The third man rode. He left the others in the yard without a backward look. Gideon looked down. The red scarf man's face had gone dark. His hands clawed weakly at Gideon's wrists. Gideon released him. The man rolled over, retching air. "Get out," Gideon said. His voice did not sound human to him. The broken-handed man sobbed as he climbed onto a horse. The red scarf man staggered twice before he found the stirrup. They rode out bent low over their saddles, one screaming, one coughing blood into his sleeve. Then the yard was quiet. Only rain beginning to tick against the dust. Gideon stood in the mud. His shirt was torn. Blood ran from his cheek. His hands were slick with someone else's fear. He did not turn toward Nora. He could not bear to see what would be in her face. He had brought the mountain into her yard, not the useful mountain, not wood, meat, weather sense. The other thing. The thing with teeth. He waited for the shotgun to shift toward him. It did not. "Wash at the pump," Nora said. "You have mud in your beard, and I cleaned the floor this morning." The porch boards creaked under her boots. The cabin door opened. It stayed open. Gideon washed. The pump water was cold enough to numb his hands. Mud ran down the trough. Blood thinned pink, then clear. His bad leg shook from the violence. His ribs hurt when he breathed. He knew what came next. He would pack. He would sleep in the barn. At daylight, he would go. Nora Bell was practical, not foolish. She had seen what lived behind his eyes when men threatened what little she had left. No woman slept easy under the same roof as that kind of man, unless she had no choice. He stepped into the cabin. The room smelled of bacon, coffee, and wet wool. Nora was at the stove. He went to the peg and reached for his coat. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Packing." She turned the bacon with a fork. "Did I tell you to pack?" "No." "Then why are you?" Gideon's hand stayed on the coat. "You saw it." "I did." "I ain't fit for a house." The bacon hissed. "You decided that?" "I know that." Nora pulled the skillet from the flame and set it aside. Then she turned. Her face was not frightened. It was tired. Angry, maybe, but not at him the way he expected. "You think I opened that barn door in winter and found a church deacon under the straw?" Gideon said nothing. "You think I fed a man built like a bear because I mistook him for harmless?" He looked down. Nora crossed to the table and touched the back of the chair he had repaired, the same chair that had groaned under him the first night. It no longer groaned. He had taken it apart, cleaned the joints, set new pegs, and glued it so it held true. Those men came because they saw a widow, she said. Not Nora Bell, not a person, a gap in the fence. Her voice lowered. I have been polite to men with dirty teeth. I have been civil to men who looked through my windows. I have stood on this porch holding a gun I hoped I would not have to fire because there was no sheriff coming over the ridge before dark. She looked at him, Ben. All the manors in the county did not stop them. Gideon swallowed. I nearly killed him. Yes. You should be scared. I am scared, she said. Of fever, of winter, of the creek taking the south field, of men who smile while counting how alone I am. She stepped closer. But I am not scared of the man who fixes the latch before he eats breakfast. The line struck him in a place no fist had ever reached. Nora's eyes did not leave his. I do not need a tame man, Gideon. Tame is for towns with lamps on the street and laws that arrive before the burial. She touched the chair again. I need a door that holds. The cabin went very still. Gideon's hand slipped from the coat. Outside, rain came harder, drumming on the roof and washing the yard where the men had bled. Nora returned to the stove, forked bacon onto a plate, added fried potatoes, and set it on the table. Wash your hands again, she said. There is mud on your wrist. He did. He scrubbed until the skin reddened. Then he sat in the chair he had repaired. It held. Nora put coffee by his elbow and took the chair across from him with her own plate. For a long while they ate without speaking. The rain struck the roof. The stove clicked. The latch on the cabin door stayed quiet. Gideon chewed slowly. He looked at the woman across the table, the loose hair at her temples, the flower along her cuff, the plain ring still on her hand, the shoulders that carried grief like another bucket from the well. He understood then that staying was not a soft thing. It was not a speech, not a promise made in clean clothes, not a kiss by lamplight, though maybe life might find its way there, or not. Staying was a post set deep in bad ground, a latch filed smooth, a chair repaired so it would hold more weight than it was built for, a man washing blood from his hands because the floor had been scrubbed, a woman setting down a plate for him anyway. The mountain would call again. He knew that. It would send cold down the draw at night. It would whisper through the pines with the old, clean language of distance and no debt. Gideon would hear it. He would always hear it. But that spring, when the rain hammered the roof and Nora Bell sat across from him in the lamplight, he picked up his fork and stayed seated. The latch held.